While Anita Turner calmly explained to the 999 dispatcher that a teenage girl wasn't waking up in her home, she had no idea police had already been listening to her family for days. They knew what happened in that bedroom. They knew about the letter her husband burned. And they knew her son had just strangled his ex-girlfriend while she slept upstairs. But the most chilling part. One audio recording captured the exact moment Elliot Turner admitted what he'd done, and it would haunt investigators for years. This is the story of 17-year-old Emily Longley and the family that tried to bury her truth. On the morning of May 7, 2011, emergency services received a call from a house in the upscale Queen's Park area of Bournemouth, England. The caller reported that a young woman had stopped breathing. When paramedics arrived 9 minutes later, they found 17-year-old Emily Jane Longley lying motionless in a bedroom that smelled faintly of cologne and stale alcohol. Her body was still warm. The family seemed cooperative, almost rehearsed in their answers. But standing in the doorway with his hands in his pockets was 20-year-old Elliot Turner, and in that pocket, officers would later discover, was his passport. His bags were already packed. If you appreciate the research and storytelling that goes into uncovering these truths, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for cold case crimes. We bring you timeless true crime stories that keep you thinking long after the video ends. Now, let's uncover what really happened to Emily Longley. Emily Longley was born in May 1994 in England to Mark and Caroline Longley. 2 years later, her younger sister Hannah arrived, and the girls became inseparable. Their childhood was ordinary in the best way: family dinners, inside jokes, parents who showed up. When Emily was 9 years old, the family relocated to Auckland, New Zealand for work. The move was significant, but the Longleys adapted. Emily thrived. She was charismatic, funny, the kind of kid who made friends easily and kept them. But as she entered her teenage years, Mark and Caroline noticed a shift. Emily began gravitating toward a social circle they found concerning, not dangerous but directionless. They wanted more for her: better opportunities, structure. So in 2010, when Emily was 16, they made a difficult decision: send her back to England to live with her grandparents in Bournemouth and attend Brockenhurst College. Emily enrolled in business courses. She had aspirations of becoming a model. She posted photos on social media that showed a confident young woman with her whole life ahead of her. And in December 2010, she met Elliot Turner at a nightclub. Elliot was 20 years old, the son of Lee Turner, a successful jeweler. He didn't work. His parents funded everything: his lifestyle, his parties, his image. He drove a Mini Cooper gifted by his grandmother but told people he'd bought it himself. He carried a hammer in his jacket, claiming it was for protection. Online, he referred to himself as Scarface and posted messages filled with fabricated street slang. His friends called him All Talk Turner because he bragged constantly about women, about money, about how dangerous he supposedly was. But Elliot had a pattern, and it had already been documented. In January 2008, when he was just 16, police issued him a harassment warning after he bombarded an ex-girlfriend with messages when she ended their relationship. He couldn't accept rejection. He needed control. When Emily and Elliot began dating, it seemed exciting at first. Late nights, parties, attention from a guy who acted like he owned every room he walked into. But the red flags surfaced quickly. Elliot monitored who Emily spoke to, what she wore, who liked her photos. He became obsessed with her social media activity, and when she didn't respond immediately to his messages, he'd spiral. In April 2011, Emily flew back to New Zealand to visit her family. She hadn't seen them in 6 months. When her father Mark picked her up at Auckland Airport, she ran to him and hugged him tightly. She told him she'd missed him. Their bond had always been strong. He adored her humor, her energy, the way she lit up a room. The next day, the family went to Emily's favorite pizza restaurant. Over dinner, she talked about college, modeling opportunities, and the friends she'd made in England. She also mentioned Elliot, but she didn't sound invested. She told her parents the relationship wasn't serious and added something that would later devastate them. "I think I'm going to end it when I go back." Emily spent 3 weeks in New Zealand. She was relaxed, happy. She reconnected with old friends and spent time with Hannah. When it was time to return to England, saying goodbye was difficult, but not final. Emily promised she'd be home in 5 months. She wanted to be there for the Rugby World Cup starting September 9th. She never made it. A few days after returning to Bournemouth, Emily texted her father. She'd broken up with Elliot. She didn't elaborate, just said it was over. What she didn't know was that Elliot had been accessing her Facebook account. He'd seen photos from her New Zealand trip, photos that included male friends. His jealousy, already a constant presence, intensified into something darker. What most people don't know about this case is that months before Emily died, she wrote Elliot a letter. It was desperate, direct, almost like a last attempt to reach someone who couldn't be reached. She wrote, 1. I love you. 2. Don't say you'll kill me. 3. Stop talking about your ex-girlfriends. 4. Stop being so aggressive all the time. Just relax. It's more attractive, and you scare me when you act so intimidating. Read that second line again. Don't say you'll kill me. A 17-year-old girl had to write that sentence to her boyfriend. She was afraid. She knew he was dangerous, but like so many victims trapped in abusive relationships, she didn't know how to escape safely. Eventually, Emily reached her limit. She ended the relationship, and Elliot refused to accept it. On May 5, 2011, just 2 days before her death, Emily posted something alarming on Facebook. "I have a stalker. Someone just called me and said, 'You don't know me, but I know everything about you.' They kept asking me out. They won't stop calling." Friends later told investigators that Elliot had become increasingly unstable. He talked openly about hurting Emily. He told people he'd do 10 years for her if he had to. He said he'd go to prison and still be a millionaire when he got out. Multiple witnesses heard these statements, but no one believed he'd actually follow through. They thought he was just talking. On the evening of May 6, 2011, Emily went out with friends to a nightclub in Bournemouth. Surveillance footage captured her arriving around 11 p.m., laughing, dancing, living the life of a normal 17-year-old. But Elliot had been monitoring her online. He knew she'd started seeing someone else, a guy named Luke Ashford, and that night his anger boiled over. He showed up at the club, confronted her in front of everyone. The argument escalated quickly. Emily threw her drink in his face. Elliot screamed at her, criticized the outfit she was wearing, called it too revealing. Even though they were no longer together, he still tried to control her. Witnesses heard him say something that should have set off alarms. "I will kill her. I'll go to prison for it and still be a millionaire. I'd do 10 years, it wouldn't bother me." He said this in a crowded nightclub, in front of multiple people, and no one stopped him. Emily tried to leave, but Elliot followed her outside. He convinced her to come back to his house. He said they could talk somewhere quieter, away from the noise and chaos. Maybe Emily thought it would be safer because his parents were home. Maybe she just wanted the confrontation to end. Either way, she agreed. Surveillance cameras near the Turner residence captured both of them walking toward the house around 1:30 a.m. Emily Longley never walked back out. The next morning, May 7, 2011 at 9:02 a.m., Elliot Turner, Elliot's mother, dialed 999. She told the dispatcher that her son's girlfriend wasn't waking up, but something about the call felt wrong from the start. Anita's voice was calm, too calm. There was no panic, no desperation. She spoke as if she were reporting a minor inconvenience, not a teenage girl who had stopped breathing. The dispatcher walked her through CPR instructions while emergency services rushed to the scene. But when paramedics arrived at the Turner home 8 minutes later, they immediately knew it was too late. Emily Longley was pronounced dead at 9:17 a.m. Thousands of miles away in Auckland, New Zealand, it was just after 2 a.m. Mark Longley woke to his phone vibrating. Missed calls from his ex-wife Caroline. Missed calls from his younger daughter Hannah. There was a voicemail. He played it. Hannah was sobbing so hard he could barely make out the words. Then he heard Caroline screaming in the background. "Emily is dead." Mark didn't believe it. He couldn't. He immediately called his mother in England. She answered, crying uncontrollably. A moment later, a police officer took the phone and delivered the words that shattered him. "I'm sorry to tell you that your daughter Emily has died." 1 week earlier, Emily had been sitting on his couch in Auckland, smiling, making plans, talking about coming home in September. Now she was gone, and no one could tell him why. Initially, Dorset police told Emily's family she had died in her sleep, possibly natural causes, a tragic, unexplained death, but nothing about it made sense. Emily was 17 years old, healthy, athletic. People that age don't just stop breathing. Elliot Turner, his mother Anita, and his father Lee all told the same story. They'd been home all night. Everything was normal. They hadn't heard any disturbance. Elliot posted photos of himself with Emily on Facebook, playing the role of a devastated boyfriend. He accepted condolences from friends. He seemed genuinely heartbroken. At that stage, investigators didn't have enough evidence to contradict the family's account, so they waited for the post-mortem examination. While they waited, detectives began reviewing Emily's recent activity. They discovered the Facebook post about the stalker. They learned about the confrontation at the nightclub. They interviewed Elliot's friends, who reluctantly admitted he'd been obsessed with controlling Emily. Several recalled hearing him threaten to kill her, but they'd assumed he was exaggerating. When the autopsy results arrived, they didn't provide a definitive cause of death, but the forensic pathologist noted injuries consistent with asphyxiation. There were signs that pressure had been applied to Emily's neck. The findings were suggestive, not conclusive, but they were enough. Investigators made a bold decision. They applied for authorization to install covert listening devices inside the Turner home. And what they heard changed everything. For days, police listened as the Turner family moved through their home, unaware they were being monitored. And slowly, the truth began to surface. On the recordings, investigators heard Elliot coaching his mother, telling her what to say to police, how to phrase things, what details to leave out. His father, Lee, sounded uncomfortable. His voice carried hesitation, guilt, but he didn't intervene. He went along with it. And then came the moment that sealed Elliot Turner's fate. He admitted to causing Emily's death. Not in a moment of remorse, not in a tearful confession. He said it casually, like he was recounting an argument justifying his actions. The audio was clear, damning, undeniable. 1 week after Emily died, Elliot Turner was arrested and charged with murder. He denied everything. His legal team immediately challenged the admissibility of the covert recordings, arguing they violated his rights. But after reviewing the application and the evidence, the judge ruled the recordings were lawful and could be presented at trial. The Turners had been so confident they'd get away with it. They never considered the possibility that someone was listening. But the recordings revealed something even more disturbing. Anita Turner had delayed calling the ambulance. She gave Elliot time to hide evidence, time for the family to align their stories. Lee Turner had destroyed a letter in which Elliot confessed to what he'd done. Anita had removed a jacket from the bedroom, the one Elliot had been wearing that night. This wasn't just a murder. This was a coordinated cover-up. If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment with "I'm still here." Let's see who's truly following this shocking story. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Cold Case Crimes, because stories like this don't just disappear. We make sure they're told. Elliot Turner's trial began in May 2012, nearly a year after Emily's death. The courtroom was packed. Emily's family sat in the gallery, her father Mark, her mother Caroline, her sister Hannah, all of them bracing for what they were about to hear. Elliot's defense was self-defense. He claimed Emily had attacked him that night, that she'd become violent and irrational, that he'd only grabbed her neck to stop her from hurting him. Let me walk you through his version of events, because understanding how absurd it was is critical to understanding this case. According to Elliot, after the confrontation at the nightclub, Emily willingly returned to his house. They went to his bedroom, a converted garage space his parents had given him, complete with its own entrance and a mini bar. They argued. Emily, he claimed, started hitting him with her hands and feet. He said he tried to calm her down, then gave up and threw a 20-pound note at her, telling her to take a cab home. Then, according to Elliot, Emily went crazy. He told the court, "I had never seen Emily that angry. I didn't know what to do. She wouldn't stop. I kept telling her, stop it, calm down." So what did he do? He grabbed her by the neck with his right hand. He pushed her onto the bed, and he held her there. When asked how much pressure he applied, Elliot said, "I wouldn't say very hard, but it was quite hard." He admitted holding her neck for 5 to 6 seconds. Then, he claimed, he let go and walked out of the room. He said he thought she'd fallen asleep. He didn't realize she was dead until the next morning when she didn't wake up. The prosecution dismantled this narrative piece by piece. They presented forensic evidence showing Emily's injuries were consistent with sustained pressure to the neck, not a brief, defensive grab. They revealed that Elliot had searched the family computer for death by strangulation and how to avoid punishment for a crime in the days following Emily's death. They called Luke Ashford to the stand, the man Emily had been seeing. He testified that Elliot had found out about their relationship and became enraged, sending threatening messages and showing up at places Emily frequented. And then the prosecution played the recordings. The jury heard Elliot coaching his mother. They heard him justify his actions. They heard him admit in his own words that he'd caused Emily's death. And perhaps most damning, they heard recordings of Elliot in jail, bragging to friends that the jury would believe him, that he'd be acquitted, that he'd soon be driving a Range Rover and living in Spain, that he'd sell the rights to his story and make money from it. He showed no remorse, no guilt, no understanding of what he'd taken from the world. On May 22, 2012, after deliberating for several hours, the jury returned a unanimous verdict: guilty of murder. Elliot Turner was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum term of 16 years, before he would be eligible for parole. Judge Mrs. Justice Linda Dobbs addressed him directly. She called him a man of striking arrogance, she said. Emily was a lovely, kind, fun-loving girl who brought a ray of sunshine to those she touched. That light has been extinguished suddenly and needlessly by you. You didn't love Emily. She was a trophy. And this relationship, if it could even be called that, was all about control. Control you enforced with threats and aggression. She also sentenced him to an additional 9 months, to run concurrently, for perverting the course of justice. But Elliot wasn't the only one on trial. His parents, Anita and Lee Turner, were also charged with perverting the course of justice. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Lee had destroyed Elliot's confession letter, burning it to ash. Anita had removed evidence from the bedroom and delayed calling emergency services to give her son time to clean up. Both had lied to investigators repeatedly, coordinating their stories to protect Elliot. When Anita took the stand, she was asked directly, "Did you believe Emily had ruined your son's life?" There was a 6-second pause. The courtroom waited. Finally, she answered, "No." But the recordings told a different story. On tape, Lee Turner asked his wife if they'd done the right thing. Anita responded without hesitation, "We've done the right thing." Both Anita, aged 51, and Lee, aged 54, were found guilty. They were each sentenced to 27 months in prison. Judge Dobbs told them, "You chose to fight this case showing little remorse. You prioritized protecting your son over seeking justice for a dead girl." The Turners served half their sentence and were released in 2013. They still live in the same house where Emily Longley died. After the verdict, Emily's father Mark spoke to the media outside the courthouse. Standing beside his ex-wife Caroline and their daughter Hannah, he broke down as he addressed the cameras. He said, "What we've heard over these 5 weeks has shocked us and disgusted us. That a man as cruel as Turner could treat a gentle, loving girl like Emily so violently is impossible to understand." Mark also addressed something that haunted him: the fact that multiple people had heard Elliot threaten Emily's life, and no one intervened. He said, "Even Turner's own mother didn't react when Elliot texted her saying he was going to break Emily's neck. Maybe, if someone had taken him seriously, Emily might still be here today." In an interview with the New Zealand Herald, Mark talked about what it's like to lose a child. His words were raw, honest, painful. He said, "Here's the thing about death: it sucks. It doesn't matter if it's your child, your partner, or your 99-year-old grandmother. It sucks. A person is here one day and gone the next, and it's not something you ever get used to." He explained that every milestone is agony: birthdays, holidays, Easter, because that was the last time he'd really spent time with her. "But the hardest part: I miss seeing the life she never got to live. We only got a small glimpse of the woman she was becoming, and I was so proud of her. I'm her father, so of course I'm biased, but the world really was a better place with her in it. It was definitely a lot more fun." In October 2020, British media reported that Elliot Turner had been assaulted by fellow inmates at HMP Wakefield, a high-security prison in West Yorkshire. The incident occurred after Elliot put up photos of Emily in his cell and allegedly bragged about receiving letters from women who called themselves his supporters. According to reports, he started talking about his release, claiming he'd soon be back to a life of champagne, Bentleys, and birds. Other inmates didn't respond well. Elliot Turner will become eligible to apply for parole around 2028. He will have served 16 years, the minimum sentence imposed by the court. Emily's family, along with many who followed this case, hope the parole board remembers one critical fact: Elliot Turner has shown no genuine remorse for what he did. He strangled a 17-year-old girl because she dared to leave him. His parents helped him cover it up, and even from prison, he continued to glorify himself and minimize Emily's humanity. Emily Longley's story is a reminder that abuse doesn't always announce itself. Elliot Turner wasn't a stranger lurking in shadows. He was a charming, wealthy young man who seemed to have everything. But behind closed doors, he was controlling, violent, and incapable of accepting rejection. When Emily tried to leave, he killed her. And when his parents discovered what he'd done, they chose him over the truth. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse, please reach out. In the United States, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. In the United Kingdom, it's 080820000247. These resources exist because stories like Emily's happen far too often. Take a moment to reflect on this case. What could have been done differently? Were there moments when intervention could have saved Emily's life? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you think this story was devastating, wait until you hear what we're covering next. A case where the evidence was hidden in plain sight for over a decade, and the person responsible was someone no one suspected. If stories like this matter to you, if you believe these victims deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for cold case crimes. We bring you timeless true crime stories that keep you thinking long after the video ends. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.